Have you ever stopped to think that falling asleep while praying the Rosary might be more than just fatigue? Have you ever found yourself dozing off mid-prayer, wondering if you were doing something wrong, or even questioning whether your faith is strong enough? The truth is, there's a much deeper meaning behind it than it first appears. Padre Pio, one of the most remarkable saints in church history, understood just how difficult it can be to maintain focus during prayer. He often said that these moments of weakness carry a valuable lesson, one that can even change the way we see both prayer and our spiritual life. Many don't realize it, but even our tiredness can have a place in God's plan. The Bible reminds us that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces. So, when sleepiness hits, it could be a sign that a spiritual battle is underway. Padre Pio, who faced countless trials, knew how to turn moments of weakness into opportunities to grow in faith. And here's the question to reflect on: what does it mean when fatigue creeps into our prayer? Is it purely physical, or is there something more? Think about it. The Rosary is a deep prayer, yet it's easy to lose focus. Who hasn't found themselves yawning in the middle of the Hail Marys, the body practically begging for rest? This happens to many people, and it's nothing unusual. But behind that tiredness, there could be something else at play. Sometimes it's not just because the day was long, it can also be the enemy trying to pull you away from such a powerful prayer. When you begin to pray, you're calling spiritual forces into action in your life. Naturally, the evil one doesn't like that at all. That's why distractions, heavy eyes, or even sleep often appear at exactly that moment. But here's the truth: what you feel is real, and it's also proof that your prayer has power. It's precisely when we feel weak that we need to persist even more. Have you ever wondered if that sleepiness means you're praying wrong? Most of the time, it's just everyday fatigue. But sometimes, it's the enemy trying to pull you off course. The good news is that Padre Pio always said, "Keep going." Even with a tired body, even with heavy eyes. Prayer can also be rest in God. And just being aware that an invisible battle is happening around you strengthens your faith. The Rosary, after all, is not just repeating words. It's a spiritual weapon, capable of bringing peace, victory, and protection. Padre Pio spoke powerfully about this. Praying the Rosary is like donning invisible armor against evil. There are stories that confirm this. One of the most famous is the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. Pope Pius V asked the faithful to pray the Rosary before the fight against the Ottoman Empire. Victory came unexpectedly, and many attributed it to the power of prayer. It shows just how transformative the Rosary can be. So never underestimate this practice. Every time you pray, you're opening doors of grace and protection. Evil knows this and tries to distract us, but resistance begins the moment we persist, even when tired. Remember this: no prayer is wasted. Every time you turn to God, something happens. You may be defeating evil, finding peace in your heart, or even protecting your family and community. True faith unleashes this power. Padre Pio understood our challenges very well. For him, sleepiness during the Rosary was not just a consequence of a tired body, it was also a sign of spiritual struggle. He said this fatigue could have three causes. The first, of course, is the most common: natural exhaustion after a full day. The busyness, the obligations, the rush, all weigh on the body, and when it's time to pray, the desire to rest takes over. Many begin the Rosary with the best intentions, but without realizing it, they turn the prayer into a kind of spiritual lullaby. Instead of being a living dialogue with God, it becomes background noise, like a television left on for company. The heart does not awaken, it becomes conditioned. And then, my friend, a prayer meant to be a spiritual battle turns into mere relaxation. It's like setting the alarm but sleeping heavier than ever. The problem isn't praying tired, it's praying numb, as if faith has become a mechanical routine, without soul, without fire. Think of the metaphor Padre Pio used. It's like a soldier who puts on armor but uses it as a pillow instead of preparing for battle. Beautiful, but useless. The Rosary wasn't given to the Church to lull people to sleep, but to awaken hearts. When we allow prayer to slip into this state of devotional trance, it loses its power. It's no longer living worship, it's just automatic repetition. How many young Christians, for example, say they pray every day but can't even remember which mystery they slept through? That isn't prayer, it's conditioning that slowly kills spirituality in silence. And what Padre Pio warned about makes perfect sense. Prayer is not anesthesia, it's fire. It's a flame that needs to be fed with awareness, faith, and surrender. A rosary prayed with full attention is worth more than 10 recited like counting sheep to sleep. Prayer isn't a pharmacy sedative, it's soul fuel. Those who enter this place of living prayer find the heart awakened, the mind enlightened, and even the body strengthened. The Bible doesn't speak of prayer as a pastime but as a weapon, and every weapon needs someone to wield it with resolve. But of course, if there's this temptation to turn the rosary into anesthesia, there's also a deeper reason behind this sleep. Have you ever noticed how sometimes, when you start to pray, a strange fatigue suddenly comes over you? It's not ordinary sleepiness, it's like something heavy has settled on your shoulders. This weight doesn't come from the body, it comes from the soul. Padre Pio warned that many people fall asleep during the rosary not because they're physically tired, but because they carry invisible burdens, unconfessed sins, unhealed hurts, and unresolved guilt. Prayer awakens what we try to hide, and at that point, the mind, unwilling to face it, shuts down. Sleep becomes a form of escape. It's like a silent battlefield. With every Hail Mary, you're not just praying, you're probing hidden wounds. And the enemy knows it. That's why he casts a spiritual torpor, like a veil, trying to make you give up before you reach the door of grace. This fatigue isn't natural, it's spiritual resistance. Imagine someone trying to cross a river with a strong current. The water pushes back, trying to stop the crossing. That's what happens when the soul carries an invisible weight and tries to pray. But here's the key. If you notice that this weight makes you sleepy, don't give up. Keep going, even if slowly, even if you have to start over. Every Hail Mary is a hammer against that wall of oppression. The enemy wants you asleep. God wants you awake for liberation. Those who persist in the rosary discover something remarkable. What once felt heavy becomes light. What once made you drift off now awakens you. And there's an even deeper truth. The very act of falling asleep in prayer can carry a spiritual message that Padre Pio made a point to explain. Many think that sleeping while praying is a failure, but Padre Pio said that, before God, it's not so simple. There's a hidden mystery in this falling asleep. When you give yourself to the rosary until sleep comes, it's also an act of surrender, almost like a child drifting off in a mother's arms. This sleep, offered to God, can be received as silent prayer, because the soul remains surrendered even when the body is still. It's not about losing the prayer, it's about allowing the prayer to continue beyond your conscious awareness. Of course, we shouldn't confuse carelessness with surrender. There's a fine line between laziness and trust. The enemy whispers in your mind, "You can't do it, give up." But God sees it differently. You tried, you made the effort, you surrendered to me. In that moment, the rosary isn't just words, it's intention, and intention before God carries eternal weight. Falling asleep in prayer, with the heart turned to heaven, can be more powerful than reciting words without love. That's why you should never feel guilty if sleep comes during the rosary. What matters is the direction of the heart. If you fall asleep with your soul surrendered to God and Our Lady, that sleep rises like incense to heaven. There's something even deeper. Often, this falling asleep is also a divine invitation to trust more and control less. In prayer, it's not always you acting, it's God acting in you. Many ask, if I don't finish the rosary, was all my prayer wasted? Padre Pio said no. An interrupted rosary is not discarded before God. Every Hail Mary, every Our Father, every small effort is recorded in heaven as proof of love. Prayer isn't measured solely by the number of mysteries completed, but by the intensity with which the heart offered itself. Of course, we should strive for perseverance until the end, because a complete prayer carries extraordinary spiritual power. But when something stops us, be it sleep or human weakness, it doesn't mean failure. It simply shows our humanity. And it's precisely in this fragility that God reveals His mercy. What seems incomplete to human eyes is often precious in God's eyes. So don't carry guilt when you can't reach the end. Pray the next day, pick up where you left off, but never think it's all lost. An interrupted rosary is still a thread connecting you to heaven. It may be incomplete in the beads, but it's never incomplete in God's accounting. The rosary isn't just a string of words, it's a school of perseverance. Padre Pio always reminded us that, as we pray, we face distractions, fatigue, and even temptations meant to pull us away. It's in these moments that perseverance becomes a spiritual weapon. The enemy knows the rosary's power, which is why he will do everything to interrupt it. Persisting, even in difficulty, is an act of faith and love for God. Often, it's in the struggle to continue that prayer becomes even more valuable. Every time you fight sleep, distraction, or the urge to quit, you offer God a hidden, silent sacrifice, deeply cherished by Him. This perseverance shapes the soul, strengthens the will, and turns the heart into fertile ground for divine grace. Each Hail Mary becomes a stone, building a wall of protection around your life. The rosary doesn't demand perfection, only consistency. Those who persevere, even without always finishing, prove their faithfulness. Padre Pio said that prayer is a long journey, not a sprint. And just as a pilgrim advances step by step, we advance mystery by mystery, day by day. The key is to never stop. Perseverance opens doors that human strength alone could never open. Often, the rosary can quietly turn into a kind of spiritual lullaby without us even noticing. Instead of being a living dialogue with God, it becomes background noise, like turning on the TV just for company. The heart doesn't awaken, it grows accustomed, and prayer shifts from a spiritual battle to mere relaxation. It's like putting on armor and using it as a pillow instead of protection. Padre Pio always warned, prayer is not anesthesia, it is fire. When the rosary becomes automatic, the soul drifts to sleep along with the body. How many young Christians, for example, have gone through this, repeating Hail Marys without feeling Christ's presence, simply reciting words? Faith requires awareness, attention, and full surrender. Otherwise, devotion becomes an empty habit, and spirituality quietly weakens. It's easy to fall into this trap, especially after a long day full of obligations and distractions. The key is to turn prayer into a conscious act. It's time to awaken the heart, not letting routine or fatigue silence the soul's voice. Each Hail Mary, each Our Father should be lived, felt, and offered with devotion. In this way, the rosary ceases to be mere repeated words and becomes a powerful weapon, capable of moving the invisible, combating evil, and strengthening faith. And if there's a temptation to sleep during prayer, that's where the next point comes in, fatigue that is more than physical. Often, the tiredness we feel during the rosary is not just bodily. Many times, it's the soul asking for a pause, trying to escape pain, guilt, or unanswered questions. Padre Pio knew this sleep could disguise spiritual resistance. The mind disconnects, the heart withdraws, and the body surrenders to sleep as a form of protection. It's as if the soul wants to avoid looking inward, to face what needs healing, even in the midst of prayer. Look at Elijah in the Bible. After Jezebel's persecution, he asks God to let him die and falls into a deep sleep. God awakens him with bread and water. This shows that not all sleep is biological. Sometimes it's an unconscious way of avoiding God's presence and the call to faith. Rest is legitimate, but when sleep becomes an escape from prayer, the soul risks silently stagnating, missing the transformation that only true prayer brings. That's why it's essential to recognize when fatigue is physical and when it's spiritual. Padre Pio taught that distinguishing this is the first step in using the rosary as an instrument of strength. When tiredness arises, it's time to open the eyes of the soul, acknowledge the weight we carry, and offer each yawn, each moment of conscious sleep, as devotional prayer. This discernment turns sleep into an opportunity for spiritual growth and strengthens faith, preparing the heart for each mystery. Just as one does not approach a king unprepared, we should not come to prayer without a ready heart. Padre Pio taught that before the Rosary, it's essential to make interior silence, confess our faults to God, and bring a clear intention. Without this preparation, prayer becomes chaotic, and sleep naturally follows from distraction. It's like rushing into a dark room. We stumble and get lost, while those who wait and let their eyes adjust to the light see clearly. This may seem like a small detail, but it makes all the difference. A minute of silence, a deep breath, a conscious surrender before beginning the Rosary can be worth more than 50 Hail Marys recited without attention. A prepared heart feels each mystery, senses each word, and keeps the mind alert. Young Christians, for example, can practice this at home, establishing simple rituals. Lighting a candle, closing their eyes, remembering their intention, and only then starting the Rosary, making the prayer more powerful and conscious. When prayer begins without preparation, body and mind sense the disconnect. Sleep sets in, and spirituality weakens. Padre Pio warned that preparation is not ritualism but a strategy to keep the soul attentive and vigilant. Every small gesture of care before praying acts as a spiritual shield. It builds discipline, connects the heart to God, and transforms the Rosary into a living practice. Once we learn to prepare the heart, we are ready to face the next challenge. Sleep as a sign of spiritual battle. Not all sleep during prayer is merely physical. Often, it signals spiritual resistance. Padre Pio said that when someone decides to pray the Rosary with faith, hell stirs. The enemy knows a conscious Rosary breaks invisible walls, topples spiritual obstacles, and weakens his strategies. That fatigue arriving at the exact moment of prayer can be a tactic to neutralize you before the prayer reaches its full power. It's like a silent battle taking place in your room, unnoticed. The Bible gives countless examples of people weary at critical moments, just before divine intervention. God's people felt the weight of fatigue during trials and challenges, yet perseverance in faith brought unexpected victories. Even in exhaustion, they became instruments of miracles and divine protection. So, when sleep comes during the Rosary, it may be a sign that a spiritual battle is unfolding right then, and that your perseverance is playing a strategic role in God's plan. So, don't be alarmed by sleepiness that comes during prayer. Instead, see it as both a warning and an opportunity. Every yawn, every moment of weakness, can be turned into spiritual resistance if you remain aware and steadfast. Padre Pio reminds us that the Rosary is a powerful weapon, and vigilance is the true fuel for that weapon. And this is precisely where many confuse peace with distraction, and that's exactly what we're going to address: the false peace that steals your vigilance. Many people say, "I fell asleep while praying, but that shows I'm at peace." Padre Pio, however, warned that this isn't always the case. Sometimes, what feels like tranquility is self-deception. It's like a guard falling asleep on duty, believing the silence of the night means there's no danger. True peace isn't the absence of noise or effort, it's the awareness of God's presence. Rest is important, but it should never replace the soul's vigilance in prayer. Jesus didn't ask us to sleep confidently, he asked us to stay watchful. There's a profound difference between resting in God and spiritual inattention. When the soul is lulled by false peace, it misses signs, neglects to fight, and fails to grow spiritually stronger. Vigilance isn't a burden, it awakens the heart, connects us to the gospel and our faith, and allows us to recognize the enemy's attacks and traps. In this sense, the Rosary is constant training to keep the senses of the soul alert. Falling asleep in prayer can be more than simple fatigue, it can be a trap. The soul must learn to distinguish legitimate rest from the distraction the enemy promotes. Every intentional Hail Mary, every heartfelt Our Father acts like a spiritual alarm clock. And to rekindle focus and energy during the Rosary, there are simple practices that can completely transform the experience. And that's exactly what we're about to explore: practical exercises to restore attention. Praying the Rosary engages both body and soul, and small adjustments can make a huge difference. Padre Pio advised making prayer alive and conscious, not merely repetitive. One simple way to awaken is to change posture. Praying while standing or walking during certain mysteries helps the mind focus. Speaking the prayers aloud also maintains rhythm and prevents the mind from wandering. Short pauses between mysteries to breathe deeply and recall your intention revive the heart and strengthen faith. Another valuable technique is full engagement. Visualize each mystery, imagine the scenes, feel the emotions of the biblical characters. The Bible shows that faith works best when deeply felt, not just recited. Young Christians, for instance, can combine this practice with praise or worship before the Rosary, turning each prayer into an intense moment of connection with Jesus Christ. The effect is immediate. Attention sharpens, spirituality strengthens, and prayer ceases to be mechanical. Finally, establishing daily discipline is essential. Padre Pio prayed dozens of rosaries each day, not out of obligation, but because he had transformed the practice into a powerful devotional habit. This discipline shapes the spirit, teaches perseverance, and strengthens vigilance against spiritual distractions. Even when sleep or fatigue appear, these small strategies keep the heart awake. And it's precisely this vigilance that prepares the soul to experience the Rosary as discipline, not just devotion, which we will explore further. Padre Pio prayed more than 30 rosaries daily, not just for devotion, but for the discipline that shaped his spirit. When prayer becomes occasional, only when time or desire allows, it loses strength. Daily discipline builds deep roots. Just as a trained body responds to physical effort, a trained soul resists in spiritual battles. Young Christians and devoted adults can learn from this, turning the Rosary into a continuous exercise of faith, vigilance, and connection with God, strengthening their spirituality. The discipline of the Rosary is not a burden, it's an opportunity for continual growth. Each Hail Mary, each Our Father, when prayed with attention and constancy, becomes a powerful tool against distractions, doubts, and spiritual attacks. Padre Pio understood that conscious repetition strengthens the soul, shapes character, and expands the capacity to love and serve. It's not about quantity alone, but the quality of surrender and daily fidelity to the gospel and devotion to Our Lady. The final reflection here is simple, yet profound. Do you pray only when you feel like it, or because your soul recognizes prayer as a vital need? Turning the Rosary into a disciplined practice creates a spiritual routine that sustains faith, hope, and devotion, even when fatigue or distraction threaten to pull us away. This habit prepares the heart for the next step: inner awakening and conscious vigilance. The key isn't to never fall asleep during prayer, but to notice when sleep begins to become the norm. Padre Pio said that a vigilant soul refuses to accept lethargy as its destiny. It asks, "Why am I giving in here?" This reflection awakens the heart and keeps faith active. Love is the true alarm clock of the soul. Merely forcing your eyes open is not enough. Every mystery of the Rosary should be lived with attention and devotion, as if each word is a breath of life and each Hail Mary a gesture of resistance against evil. Spiritual vigilance transforms mechanical prayer into living experience. A Rosary prayed consciously can open invisible doors, protect your family, strengthen your community, and renew personal faith. Padre Pio said the Rosary is the weapon of those who love Our Lady. Without love, it becomes mere routine. It's better to pray one Rosary with full presence than dozens repeated without attention. It is through this inner awakening that spirituality deepens, and prayer becomes true protection against distractions and spiritual attacks. Observing your own patterns of sleep and attention during prayer is essential for spiritual growth. A soul that remains vigilant understands that every yawn or moment of fatigue can be a signal of battle, an invitation to perseverance, and an opportunity to strengthen faith. And it is precisely this awareness that leads us to the essence of the next topic: how to transform the Rosary from a simple dormant ritual into a fully awakened weapon, capable of changing not only your prayer but your entire spiritual life.